Welcome to the Everything Saxophone Podcast. My awesome guest for today is Susanne Alt, all the way from Amsterdam. Okay, she's an amazing saxophonist, and we're going to talk with her. We're going to deep dive into her history, and her album is due. It's out today, the date that we're recording this, which is February. Well, actually, no, it's been out. Today is February 19th. Her album has been out since the 16th. So congratulations on that, and welcome to the podcast, Susanne.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so let's talk about, we're going to get to the album, but I want people to get to know you. So you're also a DJ as well. So I'm going to be very interested to talk about this too, but let's talk about saxophone, and you also play flute and probably some other woodwinds as well. When did you get started in music?
I got started in music when I was born, because my father, he's a incredible classical music lover, and also he studied conducting, but later he was a piano teacher, and he was also teaching music in school to kids. So he's always really deeply, heavily a big music fan, and also opera and stuff. So I heard a lot of classical music and symphonic music from very, very early age on. Or of course, they even said like they were playing a lot of music when I was not born yet. So in the belly, I was surrounded by music my whole life. And my mother, she used to be a school teacher, but she also became she studied guitar, classical guitar, and became a guitar teacher. So my whole childhood was filled with singing and playing music.
You know what's interesting about that? For some people, they like you, they grow to love it and all that kind of thing. Some people get turned off though, right? Because it's like they don't want to do what their parents are doing or whatever. So that's really cool that you did pursue this route. I'm curious, a lot of classical music, right? So let's go on. When did you start? Did you start on piano?
Yes, when I was 6 years old, it was actually my wish for my birthday on when I turned 6 years that I was allowed to start with the piano lessons from my father. Little did I know that sometimes it's not that handy to get piano lessons from your own father, because then you get this awkward situation of your father who's a piano teacher then, but still he's your father. So sometimes it's it can be like a luxury problem. It's so great that everybody's into music, but at the same time, your father is or your mother is a critical teacher, and who is also suffering when his student is not playing correct,
Or not
So
practicing?
yes, so of course he's a teacher, then knowing if I did practice or not practice, so you get these a bit mixed feelings about, also for my parents. Now I'm older, I don't have children though, but I can imagine that it must be hard also to see your kid sometimes not practicing, or the way the kid is practicing is not the correct way, and you hear it just in the background, like, oh, this is not the way, and then you're getting out of bed and going downstairs and saying, you should practice like this, so well, it was great, and it was also different than other people. So I think at some point, so when I was 8 years old, I switched to guitar because I thought somehow it's not working with my father, because he was a very precise teacher, and then the combination with being a father would be a little bit complicated. But so then I tried guitar from lessons from my mother, and that it was more smooth, but still it still felt a bit strange to have lessons from my parents, and but of course I didn't know exactly what it was. But then I saw, when I was 12 years old, I saw a woman playing in a big band, a saxophone, and then I was like, wow, this is so cool. So not only the woman, not only the beauty of the instrument, but also how cool is that a woman is like a really like strong, cool woman, not this cute doll playing really cute, but no, really strong, like really cool woman playing saxophone and playing solo. Then I thought, wow, this is what I have to do. This is what I want.
That's awesome that you had that experience because
Yeah.
I could tell you, again, when I was growing up, we didn't see those kinds of, we didn't see women on saxophones or trumpet or trombone. We just didn't, and I do remember when I was in my 20s, I saw the big band Diva,
Hmm.
DIVA, and I've
Yeah.
interviewed some of the women for my podcast, and that was so epic for me. And that big band is it's still going strong, but they
Hmm.
were great. I mean, it was tight, solid sound. It was really awesome, and it was really inspiring. And I'm glad that you got the chance to see that when you
Yeah.
were 12.
Yes. So yeah, it was an army big band, because I'm from the south of Germany, Bavaria, and because of World War II, there were still a lot of army soldiers stationed in the south of Germany, uh, not only to keep the peace. I mean, later on they would be stationed there to because I just tell it because maybe younger people may not know, to keep the peace in the region, or if army soldiers like U.S. Army soldiers would be injured in maybe in Middle East, they would fly to the city called Würzburg, where I'm from, and stay there in hospital. So there were a lot of soldiers always, army soldiers there. So and later on there they moved them back to the States, and I think there's still a few there, and like especially for the strategic and the hospital function, but not to keep the peace in Germany. I mean, yeah. So the function changed, but that's why there were many American soldier or army bands of any kind, big bands performing in the south of Germany. So we were a little bit more influenced by America, by the United States, than maybe other regions in Germany.
That's really interesting. That's
Yeah.
fascinating. Wow. Okay. And that's really good to know. Awesome. So now let me ask you this question. So you saw this big band. You're like, wow, this is great. You see these women playing saxophones. You're like, wow, this is really great. So then what happened at that point? And I'm wondering what your parents thought because they've trained you on piano, they've trained you on guitar, and now a
Classical.
saxophone. Yeah.
Yeah, well, my mother, she loved it, but she knew that my father would not approve of this noise, because he's a very sensitive person also, and he would really think such a noisy instrument, and but we just bought the saxophone, and it was a fact. So thanks to my mother. Yes, so that's how it went. So my mother was supportive, and then of course later on my father, of course he knew because I had musical talent. He saw that I really liked it, and then he also approved. But he always found it a little bit noisy because of his sensitive classical ears.
Okay. Was that a problem like practicing early on for you? Was it a problem
Mm,
practicing in the house?
yeah, a bit, because not because of the neighbors, because I was growing up in a village, and no, not an apartment, but really a house, and with farmers around it, and a garage, and so no, not that, but more that my father really they were having their little walk, and then I was practicing, so because it was so noisy, but well, yeah, that's how it was. But so I guess they were really you could say they were supportive. Yeah.
Okay. And let me ask you, first of all, was it an alto? I'm assuming it's an alto sax.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes, and that's also a bit of a funny story, because it was a Yamaha 23, I think.
Yeah, the
Lovely.
YAS 23. Yeah.
Yes. So that was, I think, beginning of the 90s, I guess, and perfect instrument, I think. Really great, the best beginner instrument ever. Or I think everybody should start on an instrument like that, with that kind of quality.
Absolutely.
And also, it's not heavy. I remember that when I switched to another instrument, I thought, wow, this is so much heavier, and this one was like really slender and light. It's a nice instrument. Yeah.
Yeah, the YAS
Alto.
20.
Oh yeah. And my last name is Alt, and in Germany or in Holland you also say you say alt saxophone. So and people still ask me to this day if it's a joke that my name is Alt, and or if I learned saxophone because of my name. But it's really I was 12 years old, and it was the normal saxophone to start with. So my teacher, who was a clarinet teacher, and I was like the experiment kid in the village, and he always. But he let the kids. I mean, normally they should have played clarinet for 2 years, and then they were allowed to switch to saxophone. But because I was musical and I had musical parents, I was allowed to start straight on the saxophone. And but so it was an alto saxophone because it yeah, that's the way it went. So it's really coincidence. Yeah.
Got it. And actually, I didn't even realize about things
Yeah.
about this. That's funny. But the other thing, also, just backtracking for a second. Yes, the Yamaha YAS 23. That was my first alto saxophone.
Yeah.
I still have it. I will never
Uh
give that away because it's
yeah, I
great
sold
horn.
it.
Yeah, it's
But
ergonomic. It's great, you know? And I didn't even think about how light it was. True. That is
mhm.
true. That is true. It's a great horn. And I know they have the more modern models of that, but I always tell people, you know, if you for your first horn, it's okay to buy used. Look for a Yamaha YAS 23. You'll find them on
Yeah.
eBay, you'll find them everywhere. And that's so funny though with the last name. But you know, you started to answer a question I was going to have, which was this, you know, your parents played rhythm section instruments, so to speak, but they're classically trained, right? So I was wondering whether or not you took lessons and all that kind of thing. And you mentioned that you had in the village there was a clarinet teacher, but they also taught you saxophone too. So was that like it was probably just a school setting? It wasn't private lessons, or am I wrong about that?
Music school. So I got I got private lessons. I mean, it was within the music school. So I
Great.
think in the beginning I had like 25 minutes private lesson every week. And then, yeah, and then later it would be, so when they saw that I really was interested, it became 45 minutes. So yeah, so a kind of private lesson, but within the system of this music school, which used to be sponsored by either the province or the city, or so it was kind of subsidized culture and stuff. So
Wow.
yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah,
really cool. That it's actually very lucky too when you think about it. You know, most
yeah,
people in the States here, we have like group lessons and stuff like that. Some people don't even get group lessons in the beginning either. It's just,
yeah.
I know in New York City, I taught there for a little bit, and everybody, all the instruments would learn. I had like maybe 50 minutes, and all the band instruments I'd have to teach them. And you know, like, okay, I'm dealing with the flutes right now. So everybody
hmm
else, you know, do X, Y, and Z or whatever. Not the best
hmm
situation, but that's really good that you had that.
Well, on the other hand, I mean, this was so here we are, this clarinet, classically trained clarinet teacher who's also teaching saxophone, also in a classical way. But of the technique he was teaching was really reasonable. We did not have a school band. We in that stadium we only had like a saxophone quartet, and then we would play. Like easy saxophone quartet music. So that was extra then. So, but I think in the beginning I had like 25 minutes private saxophone lesson. So we had to pay it, but I think the whole music school system was supported by some government in a way. So the structure, so because they thought back in the day, right now it's also everything is like gone and destroyed, unfortunately, but in the 90s, people were thinking it's really important to have culture, to teach about culture and music and stuff. So it was a great time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's and in the States too, you know, I think things have also it depends on where you live, you know,
hmm
whether it's stressed or not. Now, I'm
But so you I think when people learn jazz instruments, then they quite quickly they would play in a band, right? Is that right? So that's the good thing about it. So you don't get maybe you don't get proper lessons, but you play together
Yeah,
instantly.
it depends on the school systems. It depends where
Hmm.
you are in the country. So, like where I grew up on Long Island, I was very lucky because we started instruments in fourth grade. I started on trumpet.
Hmm.
We started in fourth grade, and we had the group lessons, and then we also played in the band and that kind of thing. And everything was classical, quote unquote classical, in the sense that we were taught to read and play. Um,
Hmm.
I was lucky though that, for me, we had after elementary school, we had a combined junior high, high school, and
Hmm.
the high school had a jazz band that I was able to get into in eighth grade, but because it was combined school. But
Hmm.
after me growing up or whatever, some school systems had like middle schools and high schools and that kind of thing, and the jazz programs I know on Long Island are very good.
Oh,
Really
nice.
great players like Sam Dillon, Lauren Sevion, came from
Hmm.
Long Island schools and stuff like that. And Andy Farber also. He was
Hmm.
one of my friends. I met him when I was in 10th grade. Again, it's stellar musicians, stellar composers, teachers, all that kind of thing. We were lucky in that the systems on Long Island, most of us, not all, but most of us would start in like fourth grade, and there were extracurricular
Hmm.
jazz bands. Like I know the East Meadow School District had it was the what was it called? I don't know if it was called the Nassau Suffolk Jazz Ensemble or just Nassau, I'm not sure, but you had to audition to get in. That was after
Hmm.
me. That was after I was going to school. It really New York really develops the jazz musicians, and I'm saying all this because I'm curious. You were classically trained. When did you start to study jazz?
The first thing I was doing was it was around the same time. Then I think I applied for or I signed up for a jazz workshop when I was around 15 maybe. So until that point, I only had played classical music, classical saxophone, and then I thought I have to. So because I'm attending this jazz workshop, which was I think 10 days around Easter, in where people could also sleep. So it was kind of a camp,
Okay.
and you had also of groups lessons with saxophone and also with band. Around that time, I also joined a little, yeah, well, it was called school big band, but it was a small big band kind of thing, like no, like one trombone, that kind of thing, And but then four saxophones or, like an improvised big band, little big band. And then I also thought I really don't know anything about jazz, so I started to read biographies.
Oh,
So and I went to the library and started to lend well or tape cassettes and stuff. So or the CDs just came up. I think my first CD was Sonny Rollins, and the second was like because I read in a biography like you really have to listen to Love Supreme, and it was all of a sudden Love Supreme, and I was like, what's this, So this was a little bit too. I mean, it sounded magical, but I didn't get so much about it, and because it sounded a bit like voodoo to me, or
totally
what's
different than the
happening. Yeah,
classical. Yeah.
yeah. But also, Sonny Rollins, it's a bit more, tunes and things I heard before, or I just started to attend to go to jam sessions. So then I could recognize, like, okay, so Sonny Rollins, that would be like on a really good jam session, So I really, because I did not have any references, what's I think that's sometimes when you have people from a really 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 different culture, when they start to speak English, and like the whole language, the whole concept of the language is completely different. So then the intonation is, they have to learn everything, and that's a bit how it was for me for jazz, but not that extreme, but like maybe a Japanese who tries to learn English, or maybe even like Korean, or when they have to learn English or German, then it's such a different concept of the whole language, and so I had to get uh, yeah, the whole concept of the music So I was raised with sheet music and interpretations of a tune. That was the biggest stretch you could get of how to perform a tune differently. And not like you can play any solo you want, and you can have a different concept in soloing. So I did not know anything about it. So that was a whole. I think now I can see that it's you have to get into the whole concept of jazz.
Okay, this
Yeah.
that's a whole bunch of things here. This is awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
so you were raised reading and playing. So
Mhm.
so what you're saying was that you're used to, like seeing the sheet music and stuff like that, and then maybe were you reading transcriptions of solos? Is that what you're
Yeah.
Okay.
Also.
Yeah. All right. Then how were you able to this is gonna help the listeners because it's not a
Hmm.
question of like age of when you did this, but a lot of people are self-taught now, or they're
Hmm.
picking up saxophone later in life because they never either, they did it in high school and then they stopped for like 50 years and then they're doing it again. So how did you break free and you start to, like you said, understand like the concept of jazz and improvising solos? How did you start to like study jazz for yourself where you could break free
Hmm.
from reading the sheet music?
Well, there was one thing my father was always doing is he was kind of improvising in a sort of classical way always, but he never called it improvising. So he would say, yeah, well, I'm just making something up or so. And also I think playing by ear, just like playing to the radio, which it's also like one form in between, like just about you. So maybe even if you try to play along the pop tune you like, and then you don't know it really well yet, and you try to play along, but then you're already kind of improvising because you try to find the melody, and you have to improvise because you don't know it yet, and you want to play by ear, and you want to play something which fits, and trying to find the melody, but then you're already halfway there. So luckily I have really good ears, and I always could play easily by ear, and I kind of kept cultivating it. And also my parents, when I was a small kid, they already did ear training with me.
Oh, okay.
So because it benefits anyone,
Yeah.
So I would, they would just call intervals and chords, like is it major and minor, and what is it, or even augmented and diminished, and scales, and even like they trained me like to recognize colors on the piano. So I don't have absolute pitch, but like partly absolute. So I recognize a few notes on the piano, like this, like really distinct sounds. So we already played around with it. So I guess that makes ear training early from early age, and also singing a lot, playing along with like radio tunes I just liked, and also listening to the piano lessons of my father from my room upstairs when he was teaching piano in the living room also helped, because then I could hear when they're playing mistakes, and yeah. So I
Wow.
think it's really the practical way, and that was very natural to me, and that like because of that, I guess I could become a jazz musician, or I could roll into the jazz. All yeah, although I didn't have a jazz parents listening to jazz,
Right,
I
but
guess.
they developed your ears and
Yeah,
they did
yeah,
it purposely, but also not on purpose because you were listening to the lessons and stuff like that, and
yeah,
listening to, people playing well, but also sometimes making mistakes, and you could hear when that was off and all that kind of thing. And
yeah,
also too, I mean, people don't realize this as well. I mean, people improvised classical music centuries ago before
yeah.
printing press and all that kind of thing. So it's not like it's weird. There are also a lot of modern classical works for any instrument where they're saying, here's the chord changes and improvise. It's
Yeah,
not uncommon.
exactly. What we know as sheet music often was the result of someone or the composer the so-called composer just at some point writing something down because they were also playing around with it, especially in Baroque music, and also I think during Mozart and yeah, piano music for sure. Also, I guess also Robert Schumann and his wife Clara, who played the piano music. I guess they would they would just have couple talks, and Robert would tell Clara to maybe next time play modulate once more or see how it works out. That's how I imagine it. So, but then you're talking really classical music where people have these really strict opinions about it. But I guess the music what that got written down, it was a bit more fluid when it was written.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a great way of looking at that too, when you think about it, for sure. So now let me fast forward a little bit.
yeah,
So, did you go to music school for college or university? I'm not sure what they call it in Germany, but
I was on a school that would be, I guess, high school, which had a focus on, yeah, well, high school and then kind of pre-college. Not that's what I'm not sure about the system either, but let's say between 12 and 17, I was in a school which had a focus on music also. And first I had to go back and practice piano because you were only allowed to have saxophone as main subject from like something else than a piano or string instrument from the age of 14. So first you had to play like the really traditional instrument, and then you could choose your instrument if you had one. So even if if you had a flute, if you're a flute player, first you had to go through the piano or a string instrument, and then when you're 14, you could go for the on the other secondary instrument, and then this would become your main instrument. So then, after going back to piano, having to, but then I had lessons from the school teacher there, which was much better. But then I switched to saxophone, and things got really well. And then I started to have lessons from the conservatory, but still so already classical saxophone. So I had like really lessons from this university music like conservatory professor for classical saxophone. And then it was quite quickly after attending also the jazz workshops and spending time with older, most of the times, guys, because they were more into jazz, like probably everywhere, it's more in general, there's a bit more boys or men who are into jazz music. So, but they were really nice and supportive and took me with them to jam sessions and workshops. So then it was really obvious that I wanted to become a musician. I studied 1 year classical saxophone, and then I won some talent award, and then I switched to jazz saxophone. So, and then I applied for different conservatories, and someone said, you really have to go to the Netherlands, the city of Hilversum. Hilversum is the place where still all the TV studios are. So because of that background, they had a really, really great conservatory. Specializing in so-called light music, so jazz and entertainment music. Years later, that school merged into the Conservatory of Amsterdam, and that's where I graduated. 4 years of the school in Amsterdam, the conservatory, and then and that was jazz, and really. Mainly focusing on playing standards in a bebop way. And then I thought I should I should not have my master there, but I decided to go to Berlin and to study with a guy called Peter Weniger at the University of the Arts in Berlin. And that was an amazing teacher who helped me more to develop my own style, and also to fix some little things which I hadn't fixed yet. So he was really like he zoomed out and zoomed in and said like, you have to fix these. You have to practice some more Coltrane changes because you did not go there yet. You know all the standards, but you have to you have to go through that giant steps in 26-2 and that. But also he said you really have to write your own music because that's the way you are making a difference in the future. Otherwise, you're just someone who plays the music of other people, which is great. But if you want to make a difference for your career, you have to write own music. So, and when I studied in Berlin, I continued to live in Amsterdam because Amsterdam was a very, very great city with a lot of live music. I would say, I mean, it's a smaller city. Have you ever been there?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it was as alive as New York, but just smaller, you know.
Oh,
So you
wow.
had jam sessions everywhere, live music every day, a couple of great places, jazz venues, and especially Amsterdam and The Hague. You had the North Sea Jazz Festival, which was really inspiring. Yeah, now I even wrote a tune about it, you know, my experiences there. But so, and nowadays it became less, and the focus in Amsterdam is more on nightlife and house music. But in the 90s and in early zeros, there was a lot of live music. Fast
Wow.
forward.
Yeah, no, this is
Yeah.
okay. This is great. I'm so glad you're saying this. I unfortunately, and people may be surprised, I've never been to Europe and I would
Hmm.
love to go to Europe. Um, I'm just surprised though that, and this is my own naivete, of course, because I haven't been to Europe. I would have thought, you mentioned like a lot of live music going on in Amsterdam. I would have thought that that still would be the case, but you're
Hmm.
saying no, it's more house music now.
Yeah, I
Wow.
mean, it looks like jazz is coming a little bit back, which is great, but it just became less and less throughout the years. And just also like in New York. I mean, I was there 2 years ago, and I was a bit, you know, like okay, you have some music in a few bars, but not as hip and happening as it used to be, you know.
That's true.
So
That's true.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. And that's yeah, that's totally true. I mean, you do have a few places that, are prominent places for people to go. And of course, there's going to be live music in restaurants and stuff. But no, the scene, and it's not just COVID either. It's not just COVID that did that for the most part, where
I think it was in around 2010 or so when I remember when I was in New York and some people would always go to jam sessions. They said, "Oh no, we're not going to jam sessions anymore. We are having jams at our places, you know." So people would come over and you would jam at someone's place. And so it kind of so well, you only had the conservative, you know, the New School and Manhattan School of Music kids like playing all the tunes super fast, but like there's not so much jamming, I think, going on. So it's more public practicing then. I think
yeah,
there was a
yeah.
difference.
I guess
But
so, and it reminds me of I was reading the book about Michael Brecker, and they were talking about how sometimes the guys, yeah, there'd be jam sessions, but they'd also have people coming over to their lofts and stuff like that, and just jamming all night
Mhm.
and that kind of thing. But I think, I guess the essence, maybe what you're also saying is the essence of the jam session, where it was in a more public place and stuff like that, and it wasn't all necessarily bebop tunes or just faster music or whatever. It could be a whole,
Mhm.
slew of different types of things. Of course, mostly standards because that's what people would know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting though, and it's. I'm glad though that you're saying that it's starting to come back in Amsterdam.
Mhm.
So you're starting to see some more, you know, some more. When you're saying like maybe some more live music opportunities, but you're also saying also some more like jam sessions and all that kind of thing coming back as well.
Yeah, more. Well, there are a couple of initiatives from some boards. For example, we have this great place called BIM House. Maybe you heard about it. BIM House is like BIM and then house. It was founded by improvising musicians like from the free jazz scene, like the improv scene, and it became a really great home to all kinds of jazz and improv musicians. Um, but I'm on this board. So I'm on this board of association who originally set up this podium, this stage. But now they are by themselves. It's a different organization. So it's like Village Vanguard was found by musicians, but it's not, I think, but a bit like maybe a bit like Lincoln Jazz Center. It was really founded by Wynton Marsalis and stuff, wasn't it?
Yes.
So, which is great. So you have this musicians initiative. But so Bimhaus became an own company, and but the association is still existing, and I'm on the board, and we are looking for new opportunities how to make people play, and there is this trickle up project when a small stage organizes concerts. There's some subsidy, and they put 50% of the fee on top, so you get a fair pay.
Great.
You understand? It's a bit hard. I never explained it in English, but so we get paid like nicely. Otherwise, the small stages could not finance it, and also I would not go there because I don't play for $100 or so, because it's silly, and you should not do that if you're a professional musician, I think, unless you have a tryout or you really have to get things together, and you can do it once in a while, but not on a regular basis. So we are with initiatives like that, it starts to bloom again. So I guess COVID was kind of not only horrible for everyone, but also a chance to think about things and how can we reshuffle and make things work better. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, there's so much in that. Okay, so
Yeah.
no, this is great though that you're doing that, because it's great that there was a rethinking of how to, make the small stages comparable in pay to the larger stages. Because the thing, I was just having a conversation with somebody the other day, and again, in the United States, depending on where you live, there are professional musicians of all calibers or whatever. But $100 a gig, I hate to say it, is sometimes what people get as a professional, as a high-rated, professional in certain parts of the country or whatever, and you can't make a living out of that. And what's really great is that you're on this board, you guys were thinking about this, and you're thinking about how to make this more appealing as a profession for musicians, because you can't survive on $100 a night. It doesn't work that way.
No. So we are really finding ways, and of course this is not the only solution, but it has to come on in many levels. Also you have to be ready to as a musician, you have to be ready to unite. Very important. People really should unite much more and share and share knowledge and see what's possible. And at this moment, I would love to also to organize more, but right now I don't have time for that, but it will come. At some point I also will organize a series of concerts or stuff, and then we'll get a little bit more into it. But the low payment, so a few years ago the payment was quite nice, and then it went down, and I already played a lot with alongside DJs. I actually, since the time I started to play jazz, also I think 1999 or so, I played for the first time with a DJ, and I also liked it very much because it's a different vibe, and that kept on developing, and it became a kind of mainstream thing in the Netherlands and in some parts of Europe to have a DJ at your party and play house music. Sometimes really nice house music, so not just the EDM stuff, but which is great music, by the way. It's really great produced, but it can be, a bit well, not so special and for the musician, but if it's a bit more deep house, or there are styles in house music which are interesting also for a musician to play along, very nice chords, and then it's really funky. It can be almost like funk music or disco, and that always was really paid very well, and everything was just taken care of. So I made a lot of money, and I had a lot of fun doing that. So yeah, while the jazz wages went down, I still had my nice income from playing with DJs. And then after a while, well, that was I think in 2015 or so, I started DJing myself just out of interest, and I thought it would be nice to be able to do this. Yeah.
Okay, I'm so glad that you're like answering all my questions. This is great. So I would so this is great. So okay, so you started around 1999 was your first, like, playing with a DJ type of gig and that kind of thing, and then it was lucrative, and there's more opportunities for this. That's the other thing too, and it's more. When I say more opportunities, I don't mean more accepted. I don't mean that. It's just, it's different than jazz. It's totally different. And there's more like house parties. There's more club opportunities. And it was getting popular, more popular. And with the rise of like EDM music and stuff like that, definitely getting more popular. So can you share, we've had Jason Whitmore on the podcast a few times. He's out in San Diego area. He plays with DJs often, and he's a phenomenal player. But can you talk about the different types of house music? You mentioned some are better for musicians than others. So can you talk about the different types of house music? And then I want to also talk about like your approach to playing over this music, to improvising over it.
Well, I could name a lot of house styles, but I think the type of music which works for me the best is in between like more disco for on the floor house, but also Latin influences and deep house, which is a bit more can be more introspective, and I think sometimes it's quite jazzy, and but then in an electronic way. So if you often deep house producers are jazz musicians who are often keyboard players who are doing another thing also just out of interest, and they looking for another sound. If you look at, of course, if you look at Herbie Hancock, for example, I mean, he has always been embracing all kinds of music styles, so he was very open-minded to all kinds of stuff. So that's the way I try to look at it, so there's either good or bad music, and and music that turns me on to play over it. And what was the other question?
Oh, well, actually, can I also get into that a little bit more? So,
Yeah.
like the influence of Herbie Hancock. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I could definitely, that's great. That's a great point that you brought up, and how some of the deep house music, the producers are jazz keyboard players, for the most part, and sometimes it's introspective and that kind of thing. Let's dive a little bit into deep house music for a second, like thinking about, like who are some of the producers, composers that people should, listen to and check out and see, maybe if they want to play along with.
Mm-hmm. What I really like is Louis Vega from New York,
Okay.
DJ Spinner, but then that's you also have Latin influences and also a lot of gospel. So if you like that, then you have a guy called Opolopo, and he's from Sweden. I think Opolopo is Swahili, some African language word for, I forgot for what, but he's a Swedish producer, and he produced a lot of interesting instrumental music with great sounds and great, I think, to play around with it, play over it. Who else? What I usually do is then also have a look on Louis Vega and see who was remixing him, and then I become interested in those producers also, because it's kind of in the connection.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. So yeah, that's well, that's a big field of I could talk about now. Oh yes, I want to make the bridge and tell how to have a concept on playing over this music, because the most important thing is you should not play too many notes. And when I say that, then I immediately think of my saxophone influences. My first influences were, I think, Dexter Gordon. He's also not wasting too many notes.
Yeah.
He's kind of playing what's necessary and kind of functional. He's not so. I mean, for example, Sonny Rollins. He's playing a lot of notes. Oh, they're everywhere. But he likes to play a lot of notes. He's really talkative on his saxophone. But Dexter Gordon is much more like, okay, or like, of course, Miles Davis, like he's super minimal. But also, well, Joshua Redman, back in the day when he was starting off, it was, which was a kind of Hank Mobley, Dexter Gordon kind of style. I really liked it so much. I was completely in love with Joshua Redman when his first records came out.
Yeah.
Kenny Garrett, when he's not playing jazz, or when he's not playing the many notes thing, but when he's playing with Marcus Miller, is also very, very minimalistic, I think, and very funky. And Maceo Parker, he's the man you should check out when you want to play little notes and maximum effect, because and then you're confronted with the thing saxophone players are not paying so much attention to, like from their background, because maybe they also came like from a harmony orchestra and classical music and playing in a big band. Timing, but that's maybe a European thing. Sometimes people are not so much connected to the rhythm. So, but I mean the rhythm himself on saxophone, that's Maceo Parker, who started out together with his brother Melvin Parker in the early 60s in the band of James Brown. And I mean, it was rhythm with chords and melody, but rhythm and words and the message and rhythm again, that was the main thing.
I'm so glad you brought out that point, because yeah, when you think about it, oh gosh, I forget the name of the tune. One of my students was really, really into Maceo Parker, and there was something where he played, I think, with a WDR big band, and
And WDR. Yeah.
Off the Hook was the name of the tune. Off the Hook,
Yeah.
great tune, and just like in his in his solo, I think it were like maybe 4 or 5 notes, but
Yeah.
it's what he did with it, how he placed the notes, how he
Yes.
played with attitude, style, where it's like you'd think, oh, there's only 4 or 5 notes, it's easy. No, it's not. It's not easy to transcribe some of these solos, because you have to feel it. You have to
Yeah.
really feel it, and it's so precise in terms of, I'll use the 16th note subdivision. Like you have to know one E and you've got to feel the one E and however whatever rhythm syllables you use. If it's Gordon syllables, it's do to te da, to the ta. You have to know, you have to feel those upbeats on the 2 and the 4 of the 16th note subdivision. And studying Maceo Parker's music's going to do that for you.
Yeah.
That's so I'm so great. Yeah, that's absolutely. So I was going to ask you, like, how to play over this music, and I remember not only speaking to Jason, but also many years ago I spoke to Richie Kanata about this, and he was starting to play. He did a couple of like club gigs and stuff like that. Richie played with Billy Joel. He was Billy Joel's first saxophone player, and he was saying the key, you don't want to play a lot of notes. It's not about a lot of notes. It's about being rhythmic. It's about the timing. You could say so much with 3 notes. And
Yeah.
again, look at Maceo Parker. Even Candy Dulfer. Candy Dulfer will add a few more notes, but she's got the funk thing, down, and she can do a lot with just a few notes.
Yeah. I think she's a little bit more influenced by David Sanborn, quite
Yeah.
a lot, I think. But of course, she's a great saxophone player. I think Maceo himself was very, very influenced by the saxophone player of Ray Charles, and I forgot his name, Hank something.
Hank Crawford?
Yes,
Yeah.
he was. He always wanted to meet him, and I think they never met, or he was just a bit. Hank Crawford would just at that moment where he could have met him, just turn around and he left, or it was a bit unlucky.
Yeah.
But Macer, he wrote that in his autobiography that he was really, really, really like this. This was his hero. He wanted to be like Hank Crawford. At some point, someone told me like, "Hey, you really play like Hank Crawford, American guy." Yeah, I was like, "Who's Hank Crawford?" I didn't know the guy. Didn't know him at all. And then I looked him up and I thought, "Wow, it really makes sense because I'm influenced by Maceo, but Maceo is deeply influenced by the Hank Crawford." So I could see the connection, and I really, of course, I felt silly that I did not know Hank Crawford.
No, but and this is the interesting thing too. This brings up another point as well. Like with a lot of, again, I've interviewed like a lot of uh teachers, jazz players, but that also teach in university and stuff, and
Hmm.
even recently like Jason Mingledorff and stuff like that, and Woody Witt and all these people, and they're talking about and even um Antonio Hart,
Hmm.
again, such a great player and he's a
Yeah.
great teacher, based in Queens College, New York. But they always talk about who are the connections. And I remember
Hmm.
it's funny. So like I took a course, a jazz history course with Antonio Hart at Queens College many, many years ago. I think it was the first time he was teaching there, and he was a great teacher back then, but he made us tapes, and CDs. He burned us CDs, that would help us to see the history. Obviously, it's a
Yeah.
jazz history course, but how people were influenced, where the influences came from, and
Hmm.
things that you never would have thought of before. And it's, again, it's tracing. If you like a certain person, well, like you said before, very in the very beginning, going full circle, you read biographies and autobiographies of people. You're seeing how people who influenced them, and if you really like someone's playing, then listen to who they listen to.
Yeah.
Do the research and stuff like that. And it's a really cool story how someone said that they can hear the Hank Crawford influence. And you're like, really? I didn't realize that.
Who is he? Who
Yeah,
is he?
exactly.
Like Google. Oh, he's actually the main influence of Maceo Parker.
and
Yeah.
and that's so cool because that's also comes around to you as well,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yes.
That's awesome, and that's great advice too. Also, let me ask this question. And I know this is kind of, it may be vague or whatever. Let's take, like, for example, deep house music and stuff like that. I'm keying in on like the word introspective, and I can understand that. I have a couple of albums released where I'm playing with a producer. It's produced music, it's electronic music, and he would call it new jazz,
Hmm.
new jazz and stuff. And some of the tracks were like, medium tempo and that kind of thing. Very few chords, but sometimes the chords they were like cluster chords. It wasn't even like a fully defined chord. It's kind of hard to explain to people, but um in terms of, like, I guess the deep music stuff, it's not going to be 2/5 chord progressions.
No.
It's not going to be that at all. It's what kind of chord progressions, if you could even explain this, can anybody expect?
I think the most important thing is call and response. And that's where what brings me to above everything. It's call and response and rhythm. And then you have to make it exciting because often it's only one chord or maybe two chords or maybe like a turnaround situation. So you have more of a modal like a mode. So you're in Dorian, you figure out like this scale is what we have here. And then the art is, I think, not to think, oh, I can play substitution here and I can sneak in a whole Coltrane progression, but keep it simple and try to tell a story with only that scale. So the limitation is you have the limitation. You have. I like to practice also with limitations that you set limitation, and you say I only, I play a solo just going upwards, and then when I'm up there, I have to play downwards. So keep the direction, or the limitation of everything I'm going to play now is going to be call and response in this scale, and it still has to be interesting. So I have to, I'm hoping for the audience then that I keep it interesting, and like to keep the musical conversation going by playing call and response type of phrases. People can hopefully relate to, that's more how I approach it.
That's great, great advice. No, it really is because, here's the thing too. You mentioned jazz. You like to practice with limitations. Gary Burton said to me, jazz is about limitations. And I always say to people, it's like we're putting you in a foxhole, figure it out. You got 3 notes, figure it out.
Yeah.
How interesting can you be with 3 notes without going off the deep end? Because if you could be interesting with 3 notes, you could be interesting with a lot more notes.
Yes.
And that's the whole thing. Sometimes too many notes is also overwhelming when you think about it. So start with a couple of notes.
Absolutely. And people are not getting it, I think you always should think of your audience, and there are some jazz heads, but there's also a lot of people who just like music, or they like to be in a place with people, or they have to go with their family member and attend this concert. Just yesterday, my mother, she was visiting me, and I had to attend this horrible concert for my ears, But of course, I go, and the music was objectively, it was good music, but just really not my taste. But I go because of my mother, So you always have these people in the audience, and you have to take care of them, and hope that they're also having a good time. If you think of jazz and fusion, then you see all these guys standing in the audience, and then sometimes they brought their girlfriend, and sometimes I feel really sorry for them because they're looking for melodies or hooks, and things to dance to, or I'm not saying all women are like that, but that's what I observe sometimes. It also can be guys, but it's more the girlfriends who joining them, and then you really see them, but really like in despair, like
Yeah, no,
I don't know.
yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying, and
And you have to give them something. And Maceo and also Fred Wesley, they really prefer. I mean, they're coming from instrumental music, and they manage to keep people really entertained and also captivated just with a few notes, really
love that
keeping the
word.
groove going. Yeah.
That word captivated. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what? Wow. That is true. When you think, I know for me, I'm speaking for me. I listen to Meso's music, and I'm captivated. I'm captivated by it. And you can't not bop your head up and down
Yeah.
when you're listening to Maceo. If you're not bopping your head up and down, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
It's entertaining, and it's not like it's, the guy has chops. People have chops. A lot of people think, oh, well, if they're not playing a lot of notes, or, fast tempos or this or that, they don't have chops. That's not the case, because you take someone like, all the guys that are out there, like Jeff Coffin, who's ridiculous, right? He's an incredible player. And he's not going to play a million notes during a Dave Matthews song. He's going to make it melodic, beautiful, and, and of course, rhythmic as well. You take
Yeah.
people like that, for sure. I think there's a time and place for, if you're going to a show that's bebop, then that's what you're going to expect. If you're going to,
But even there, I think it should be like it. There's a school of a jazz performers when they really try to like you have this jazz band, and then not the drummer is not playing solo in every tune, but they have like the special feature. It can be really helpful, and also you can think of that as a soloist, as a melody player, to uh, not give everything at every tune, but to really create also think like, okay, I'm keeping it easy there and transparent and play along with play around with the melody. But there are a couple of spots where I go all the way, and that's then really a burst out and a big feature, and it's long, but then there's no piano solo, so you have to. It's important that you don't do everything in every song, because then it will lose the effect, and that's something I also really learned with Maceo and Fred, but also with house music, because just a few notes can have a huge effect versus overplaying in every tune. Then it's just too much the whole time, and then it doesn't stick out anymore. So yeah.
That's a great tip. That's a fantastic tip too, because the thing is that if you overdo it, if you overplay, and then the audience has, nothing to look forward to for the next tune,
Yeah.
or even in the same solo,
Mhm.
if it's all like a ton of notes, whatever, and you're highly skilled, and that's great, that's fantastic. But then I think it's almost too much for the audience to digest. And
Yes, it's you say digest, and I just thought it's really also about cooking. If you put all the tastes, it will be too much. It will be overwhelming, and it's just not tasteful anymore. Oh yeah, well that's literally. I mean, yeah, I think that's the problem then. Yeah.
it's a great analogy. It's a great analogy. Can you imagine can you imagine eating something that has someone pours the whole bottle of spices for each
Yeah.
spice in there? This would be way over the
But
top.
also there's a big crust on it, and it's also really soft and really a lot of salad. Then you think like, wow, this is just too much. And then you will not have a dessert or more drinks or yeah, will be
Yeah.
too much.
You're making me hungry. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, me too.
I think it's dinner time for you. That's why we're having this cooking analogy talk. All right, well, let me go down a different route here for a second, because you've played with DJs, you DJ now. Because you're a musician and you're DJing, you're thinking also about, I'm sure, as all DJs do, but I think you have an extra edge in the sense that you're thinking about melodies, you're thinking about hooks even more, you're thinking about how to make this so musical and stuff like that,
Mhm.
telling a story, through whatever you're playing. And what I wanted to know too, when you're DJing, do you ever pull out your saxophone and play along? Are you doing that at the same time?
Yes, and I also have a DJ live act where together with the singer and a percussionist and sometimes a violin player, and they are also DJing, and we are switching.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah, and then they're all female, so it's really interesting, and because the atmosphere is really great. I mean, there's this, there are these initiatives to because there are too few female headliners on festivals. There's an organization I think called Key Change, and they made this statement like we really have to work on it because all the festival headliners are male, and most of the bands are male. So sometimes you have this. I mean, Taylor Swift is great exception, and a couple
Right.
of more. But of course, I mean, great singers and stuff. But if you go more into the jazz and a little bit more, yeah, not so mainstream music, then it's so many guys, and especially in jazz. And in jazz, you have mainly singers and just a very few female instrument players who keep playing also when they get older, because often you have this young talented saxophone player, and then at some point they become 35 or older, and then they are not young and talented anymore, and they're getting a little bit frustrated because they are, mobbed away from their colleagues, or the payment is just bad, or even there are some bookers who think they rather book another young, attractive musician Because they shouldn't look nice, because they want to look nice and have nice looking young women, and but there's not so much space for like middle-aged talented women. Then they rather play book guys, or it's easier, or so there's a lot of work to be done. So this was one of the reasons I thought of having this DJ live act with only a female, so I really could sell it also to bookers. Like, listen, you want to have this closing act on your jazz festival, and you really need female headliners on your festival, on the big stage. So hey, by coincidence, I have this great act where everybody's dancing and having a good time, and also because it's all it's also in female sports, but also in female musicians, the atmosphere becomes really nice and not aggressive, so people are not fighting, or they're just like, oh, one love. So
Yeah.
yeah,
What's the name of your live act? Is it just your name? Like, what's the name of your?
it's called my record label is called Venus Tunes,
Right.
and my act is called Venus Tunes Live. So playing the tunes of
Got
Venus
it.
Tunes, and then the live Venus Tunes Live. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, that's and everybody, we're going to put obviously links in the show notes for Suzanne's website, for also links to buy her albums as well, and you're going to get, all this information too.
Yeah,
That's
I
great.
have some nice YouTube videos of Venus Tunes Live also, so maybe
Okay.
it's nice to look at. Yeah.
Absolutely. We're going to put that on as well. And but here's the thing too, and this is a good segue. We also you put out your own albums on your own label, Venus Tunes, right? And your album, like I mentioned at the very beginning, came out February 16th. And let's talk about your new album. And I also want to talk about the influence of Roy Hargrove.
So COVID hit, and until COVID, before COVID, I was doing a lot of DJ work, playing with DJs or DJing myself, and obviously everything stopped and it became very quiet. Luckily, I had some saving money, so I did not have to work somewhere immediately. And my boyfriend, he was very supportive of me, because I was a bit I was not in a depression, but I was depressed. Like, this
Yeah.
is horrible. I feel so horrible not to be able to work and having like 100 or 120 gigs a year, and then nothing. Everything just went away, and I'm really used to earn my own money also. So um, I really felt bad. So, but he said you should really go and sit down and use the time now and write music, and set up songs, and even if you don't totally finish them, but make like well, the way I work is I work in Logic, but musically, what sorry, what I write are kind of, it's like in the real book you have the lead sheet, kind of,
Right.
but so like a simple form, like ABAC or AABA of a song, so it's a bit more than the idea. So it's actually the lead sheet of a tune.
Got it.
So I made a lot of them. So I cleaned up. I looked in my whole computer, and what ideas did I have? I have to finish. Let's finish it now and make at least this form, so I have something. And then I realized that because I thought I should make more electronic music at that point, but then I thought, no, these tunes are really jazz. They are.
Okay. That's where it came out. Okay.
So I have to make a new jazz album, I think. And then I thought, yeah, what did I always wanted to do is recording a jazz album in New York, which is like a childhood dream, or thing you want to do when you grow up. Like when I'm grown up, I want to go to New York and record my album. So, Roy Hargrove had just passed away, I think, in 2018.
Yeah.
When he only turned 49 years old, and he toured a lot. I think well, also, by the way, Fred Wesley and Matthew Parker, they toured so much, and still, I mean, Fred is still touring a lot throughout the whole world. It's amazing I think he's already 80 years or so, still touring. And the best thing, the thing he likes to do most is just touring and playing and. So Roy Hargrove, he always would play a tour, and he after every gig, he always would go to the local jam session and jam there. And also in New York, every time I was in New York, and I would go to a jam session situation, and then at some point, like Sync Bar or something, then he would come, he would just appear, because he always would go there. So, but also if you had played in Amsterdam, you would go to the local jazz bar and join in, or go to the jam session, also in every place he toured. And he would mingle with the local musicians and also sometimes give some advice or be a bit strict, but also if there's already three horn players, then he would go and sit at the piano and just play. But also you always played in a way like with a certain statement. Sometimes he had this thing in his head, like, okay, now I'm really into Stevie Wonder, so he played the Stevie Wonder tune. Or he's like, okay, now I'm into Cedar Walton and we should play this and that tune. And he would play it at the piano, and people would have, and like the certain harmonies he really thought of. So he was like really clear in his what he wanted to hear, and that way I think he was always casually teaching people on the way. I know so many people who have memories of him jamming with him, and that they learned something. And also he would be very, very kind and just give compliment, of, yeah, oh, you have such a beautiful sound, things like that. I heard from when he passed away, I saw a lot of messages like on social media, like, oh, he always came to me and he said how beautiful my sound was. And this is something which is so important. So I think things I learned from him are also that you have to be supportive to other musicians. And well, what I just told you about the women, I try to extend that also a bit more, because I always was the only girl or woman, and playing a lot with guys. So I try to extend the supportive way of behaving more towards women. Also try to play more with women, and kind of a sisterhood thing, which feels still, I have to work on that it doesn't feel cringy, but like, ugh, but it's so necessary and we should really do it. But just in general, to be more supportive and point some people in like they're already there, and if they just switch a little thing, then they're just going, so much better. And to do this in a gentle way, So I think that's something I learned from Roy Hargrove, just the way, the funky appearance and being kind, but being also sometimes really clear. Also, he was such a small guy. I'm tall. I'm 6 feet.
Oh wow, I'm short.
Yeah.
I'm 5'3", so I can relate more to Roy.
Yeah. So, but I always liked the way he moved. His daughter is a dancer, and I think he also has some persona there. He looked a bit sometimes um, like he had a silhouette, also, and the way he moved, it was like he really thought about his appearance, and he was very clear in the movements he made. So literally the movements of his body, but also what he played. It had a very clear direction, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, this is great because you again you answered one of my questions. I was going to ask you, like, what was one big lesson that you learned from Roy, but it sounds like it's being supportive of other musicians, and
Yeah.
and you're taking it one step further, especially being supportive of female musicians. And I just wanted to also say this too, like, women are, I know in the States they're doing that. I know that Lauren Sevion and Alexa Tarantino, they have like the group Artemis and all that kind of thing. And I know in Las Vegas in the summer, one of my friends on Facebook, she's organizing a festival in Vegas around August 1st through the 3rd, somewhere around there, where it's going to be female entertainers. So it's and even the big band Diva, has been around since the 90s and actually before that and stuff like that. It's those types of things. And it, what it could be? It could also be that women depends on where you are in the world, but maybe women are feeling like they don't need that anymore. But
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I don't know if that's necessarily true because it's not like in the early days of diva where it's like, oh, you know, they may have gotten a lot of flack, or I know,
Mm-hmm.
not diva, I'll say this. The women big bands from the 40s, from the 50s, even earlier where, they'd get flack, they had to look really pretty and there was that expectation of,
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to be that great musicians, but they have to make up for it in looks. That's not the case now. It's not the case now. There's some monster players like Lakeisha Benjamin, who's just
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous. She's so
Yes.
good.
Yes.
And she's just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
There's also Chelsea Barrett's in New York, who's
Yeah.
just incredible. She's again, so many great players, but I think it's more a question of the sisterhood, right? And
Mm-hmm.
supporting each other and just the fact that you said before, like bookers are not making women headliners. And I'm thinking about Lakeisha because she's starting to be that, which is great. She's like to me like she's the female John Coltrane. That's what I think about when I think about her. She's just so good. But it's just the fact that bookers are still thinking those old ways, you know,
Yes.
and I'm going to say it's disgusting, and it
Mm-hmm.
has to stop. And I think that these things are changing with what you're doing, with what some of the other people that I'm mentioning are doing as well. I think that's going to be great. But I'm sorry, go ahead. You were going to say something.
Well, I was, but then I forgot.
Okay, sorry,
You
sorry.
know, then you're really like, okay, I have to interrupt, and then you forget.
Yeah, no, no,
No,
no,
but
no worries. But
oh
just
yeah,
okay.
there was also indeed. Earlier on, I did not pay so much attention because I thought we don't need this support system. But in the recent years, I really learned that no, uh, it is necessary, but also at this moment, there's a lot of discussion going about it to be more diverse and inclusive. And I wanted to, before I go on with this, Claire Daly, I think
Oh yeah,
Daly,
Claire Daly. Yeah, she's awesome.
she had she had this platform, I think called jazzgirls.com, and it sounds a bit strange, but it was just a network page of with names and addresses of jazz women all around the world. And this was really in the early days of like before MySpace, or you had this community, I remember. And then yeah, well, MySpace also you could you started to faces to persons, and oh, they're actually really working. And that's also when I discovered it's Lauren Sivian and Chelsea Barrett, and yeah, that was MySpace. Yeah.
Yeah, I interviewed Claire also, but we didn't talk about Jazz Girls. So I
Yeah.
have to, okay, I have to do a little research on that. I don't think it's still going though, right? I don't
No,
think.
I don't think so too. But it was earlier, maybe around early 2000s or even before. It was
Okay.
really a platform for female jazz musicians, and it was very interesting, I think.
No, that's
Yeah.
great. And like I've interviewed her, I've interviewed Virginia Mayhew also as well, and Laura Dreyer, again, another
Hmm.
great player, all from the Diva. I knew them from the Diva Big Band, and when I saw them at the Blue Note in the 90s and stuff, and it just that performance really affected me. And I keep saying that to those women, and it's cool, it's great, but
Yeah.
it's such an important thing to support each other, and that's great that's like one of the big lessons that Roy taught you for sure. And getting back to Roy's influence, how did he influence some of the works on your new album Royalty for Real?
I guess I would really think of the way he would. I really liked his tone also, especially on flugelhorn, and I think his tone also influenced me when I play ballads. So really kind of let the tone speak, and not so much when he plays a ballad. It's mainly about the tone. I would say it's not so much about the all the chords and all the vocabulary you can put in there, but it's quite I think he plays it quite like a singer, and more playing around with the melody. And of course he goes, when the solo is longer, he he goes and explores. But I know that he was really crazy about Sarah Vaughan and but also about what's her name again? I just forgot it.
Fitzgerald? I don't know if it's Ella Fitzgerald or
Shirley
Shirley Horn.
Horn.
Okay.
And she's also a minimalist in her singing. And she really puts the words in the way she phrases. And he really, really loved it. Like, I think Sarah Vaughan and Shirley Horn, they were his main female vocalist influences. And I often when for these tunes, I really imagined how he would play it, and I tried to a little bit play like I think he would play it.
Yeah.
And well, one tune, I mean, I'm playing one tune which is composed by him, Roy Allen, which he wrote for his father. The Nearness of You is a ballad he played a lot of times. I heard it a lot of times. And Royalty for Real is a little bit influenced by this tune called Strasbourg Saint-Denis, but then in a bit more ballad kind of way.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's this tune called Bel Air Bob, which refers to the Bel Air Hotel in The Hague during North Sea Jazz Festival, where they had again jam sessions, which went on the whole night. So there would be the 3 days of jazz festival, and for 3 nights, after 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock when the festival was finished, all the musicians, they slept in this Bel Air Hotel, and the international musicians. And then also they would mingle with the local musicians and jazz fans and journalists and managers. And then there would be this epic jam session until the breakfast.
Wow. Oh my God.
It was crazy. With Joshua Redman, James Carter, Brentford, and Wynton Marsalis, Delphio Marsalis, Roy Hargrove playing the whole night or playing the whole time, in the beginning, and then he would go away and come back and play once more, Marcus Miller, George Benson, he was leading the jam session. So he would be the opening act of the jam session, and things like that, so that was super inspiring. But also they would come together, all those great musicians, because they never got together, even if they lived in New York, but they were all touring. So this was the big party. So they would, but also like Questlove would play drums then with a bass player from Roy Hargrove, and some local piano player, and then maybe James Carter's saxophone, and then I would be there, maybe I can play a little bit, and maybe not too long because I don't want to annoy people, but I still want to play, But when you are standing in a good jam session with great players, when you're standing next to them and you next solo you have to do that's it's different because you really have to go for it, but at the same time have a bit of self-reflection and not think it's all about you. No, you're just one of the players, you have to kind of see what the circumstances are. But still you have the right to be there. But your task is, I think, to see where does the story end of the other soloist, and what is your role now? And then because someone after you has to take it over again. So you're not just playing a solo, but I think if you're smart, like if you are playing, imagine you have to play after James Carter. I mean, he's like one of the most virtuoso players of all time.
Yeah.
And then you don't try to do the same, I mean, that would be silly because, or at least I'm not capable of that. But then I try to do something opposite, start with a long note and play something interesting. So people think, oh, but that's different, that's interesting. Yeah, and then I also give the chance, and then I still can develop, if something is going on between me and the rhythm section, but I still give some air so the next soloist can do whatever he wants with it and go on with the story.
That's, again, fantastic advice because you start off by saying, if you're standing on the stage with incredible players, for a lot of people, that can give them a heart attack. It actually, it's nerve-wracking and you feel like you have to compete. But
Yeah.
what you're saying, yeah, you have to go for it. But more importantly, I was going to ask you what you meant by go for it, but you kind of explained it as, you're on that stage. If you're following someone like a James Carter, who has ridiculous technique, right? If you fight his fight, so to speak, as we say in
Yeah.
like martial arts, if you fight his fight, you're going to lose. But if you
Immediately.
Right, but
Yeah.
if you be yourself, but
Yeah.
more importantly, you have to know who yourself is, but more importantly, where did that person leave the story? And
Hmm.
where do you want to take it? I think that's great advice because like you said, sometimes if someone before you, they're showing off their technique just really, really good in terms of technique and all that kind of thing, you may want to, I need to slow this down. I need to give the music room to
Yeah.
breathe. And a long note, a whole note, with a nice sound, with style to it. And then, being rhythmic and finding a groove and get locking in with the rhythm section and maybe doing something, that would reflect who you are. Again, we all have to find who we are on our instrument.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the best example, I think, is the Miles Davis Quintet with Cannonball and Coltrane. So you get this three, I mean, only the horn players already, because Sabino is adding another layer, but only the horn players. You have three. It's really like the color spectrum. Like you have the red and the blue and the what is it, yellow, I think,
Yeah, yeah.
because and there's a word for it, but together they are one, but they're really adding up, So I think that's what you have to.
That's so interesting.
And
And
yeah,
let me ask you something. You had mentioned this before when you studied in Berlin, and the teacher that you studied with helped you to find your voice. Can you talk a little bit
yes.
about that? Like, what was that? What does that mean? What did that mean for you?
Yeah, he really figured out what kind of also harmonic context I hear in my in my head, and which is strong. There are always certain chords, or that it's a style where somebody's gravitating to, and if you emphasize it and develop it, I think that's all. It's not it that's simple. So you have certain features, and then you just work on it to make it even better. Yeah,
So
I
it's
guess.
finding those features. So in a sense,
Yes.
it's finding those
Hmm.
features in you. And this person had, um, not, I don't want to use the word the wherewithal, but this person had the ability to help you to see what you resonated with, the
Yes.
styles that you
Hmm.
resonated with, and then help you develop that instead of saying, okay, learn these 5 licks, you've got to do this and you've got to do that. Instead, he work with you on a more like a more personal level, in a sense, to try to find out who you are. Am I right about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. So my previous study was more about learning the craft, and indeed learning all the 2 to 5s through all the scales, and learning the standard repertoire, and playing it in a certain hard bop way, and neatly and nicely. And then the teacher in Berlin, he really looked at me and listened. What are your features, and how can we develop the features, and so you become a unique play, even more unique player. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really
Yeah.
good. And
Yes.
I think, it just shows also one of the big themes here too. We talked about just everything that you've done, and we talked about, like, you gave tips for playing with DJs and stuff like that. And you talked about how it really is about the audience and connecting with them,
Hmm.
and great tips about call and response and thinking about that kind of phrasing when you're playing with DJs. And it's not about a million notes, it's about the whole Maceo Parker captivating effect and that kind of thing. But it doesn't, that's not just the case when it comes to, you know, that style of music, because it really
Hmm.
is in any style of music that you resonate with. It's resonating also with the audience and, you know, keeping them captivated. And more importantly, I think also from here too, you know, finding your own style. You know,
Hmm.
you want to study, like just like with regular school, right? We have to study everything until we see, you know what, that's what I like to do. And then you
Yeah.
explore that and you bring that out further.
Yes.
Yeah. And the thing is too, interestingly enough, like a lot of people be like, "Oh, but you know what, she plays with DJs. How could she have any jazz chops and all that kind of stuff?" Well, you did. You studied all that. Um how do you, yeah, so you know what I wanted to ask you before, a couple more questions.
Yeah.
You've been generous
Yeah.
with your time. Thank you. How do you keep your jazz chops up? Like, what do you practice? What are some things that you practice nowadays?
Sometimes I really don't practice, and sometimes I have these uh, months or weeks after in a row when I really think I have to work on my technique. So I mostly practice technique, and that's really old-fashioned scales. Well, I might like sometimes I haven't practiced for a while, and then I would think, okay, let's not start with and then you maybe it's just age, you know. I'm 45 years old, so
Oh,
it
yeah.
starts. So your sometimes your muscles, you have to really train them, not just your embouchure, but also your muscles. So the weaker fingers, they are going, hey, but I became a little bit weaker, you know. So I really have to practice scales. But then I think, okay, let's not start with the major scales, but let's go straight to some mode, you know, and keep up with it. Like, okay, or just play a harmonic minor, but not or a melodic minor, but not resolving it, but just keep the so you have this alternate scale,
Right, right.
and just stick with it. And because I haven't practiced now for a couple of weeks, I have to start on tempo 116 or so and play 16th there, and which is not acceptable for me as a professional player. It has to be. I mean, I ideally want to be able to play it on 132, you know, and then I'm like really well, but also thirds and fourths and fifth and sixth in a scale like that, or six note groups, or things like that. It's quite basic stuff, I think, but it makes your brain also like, which also, you know, it gets slower if you don't practice. And I guess it's just how life is, and it's not a bad thing. But you start to feel it, you know, after a holiday or a while of maybe working very hard on other things, or organizing stuff, or working on the board, and then you think, oh, I really feel like my fingers are getting a bit slower, or the hand tongue
Oh,
combination, you
articulation.
know,
Yeah.
it's just not working together, you know. Those guys, they're not working together. So well, it's really time for the metronome and me and the saxophone, and let's get together.
Do you like when you take long periods of time off? I would flip out, but it
I
doesn't.
don't do it consciously, but I have gigs then, but
Okay.
then I don't practice, you know. I play, so kind of the excuses, but yeah, well, I'm playing anyway,
Oh, got
but
it. You're
I'm
still
not
playing.
practicing.
You're
Yeah.
just not taking okay, okay. Good. I'm glad that you clarified that. I'm thinking, oh my God, she's taking like weeks off from even touching the horn. No, it's not that.
No,
Okay, got it. Okay.
but I'm not helping myself. Well, it's almost like you are still walking if you go for grocery shopping, but you're not working out, you know. So then you will see the difference. I mean, yes, you can still walk, but you cannot run, or you are not flexible, and you start to gain weight. And that's what happens when you with your embouchure and your fingers and the coordination of tongue and hand. If you don't practice, you so that's unfortunately I, well, I don't enjoy practicing so much, but I just know it's necessary, and then I have to go and sit down in my practice cabin and go for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I'm glad that you clarified that. And that's great because it's also, it's giving people again, your advice about some of the things that you practice. And, when it comes to, whatever style of music that you're playing, because and I'm gonna ask this in a second, but when you're doing like with the deep house music and DJing and stuff like that, you're thinking about a scale or a pitch set and how can you be creative with that? And you need to have the technique to do that.
Yeah.
Um, but you know what I wanted to ask you in terms of like performances and maybe upcoming projects and stuff like that, upcoming performances, what's the split? Are you playing, you're going to be promoting your album, so are you bringing a group on the road to tour to promote your album for the jazz stuff? And like what's the split between the jazz stuff and the DJing stuff?
I'm not sure yet because it's been a while. My last jazz album was in 2012. After that, I released a funk album also with Fred Wesley and some guys from P Funk and SOS band, and it was really a great mix of people. But then I realized not going to tour with a funk band because it's a complicated, Then I should tour with a 10-piece band to really make it sound, like
Yeah.
it's supposed to be. Fred Wesley, he's touring with normally he's touring with a 7-piece band, it's not easy to get bookings for, if you're not as well known as Fred Wesley worldwide. So I thought, okay, let's have remixes of this funk album and play it with Venus Tunes Live, the DJ Live act. So
Oh,
that's how
cool.
I toured with the previous record. It seems that this album is quite well received already. I got some really, really nice interest and reviews and there's much more coming up and also some nice bookings here in the Netherlands. Um, I plan to play more jazz, but I'm not sure how much. I will see, and I would love, of course, to bring the guys from New York who play on the album to tour with them. So it's a piano player called James Hurt who played a lot of um, uh, even free jazz, but also straight ahead jazz. He played with, I met him when he played with Abraham Burton. Maybe you know him? Yeah, Abraham Burton.
No, I don't.
No? Oh, he's
No.
a great saxophone player from New
Okay.
York.
I'm writing that down.
Um, who actually was crazy about Jackie McLean, who's also
Mm.
a great player, I think. So via this Abraham Burton guy, I really got into Jackie McLean, but he was playing with James Hurt was playing also with Abby Lincoln, but also he played with DJ Spinner and some really hip amp fiddler who just recently passed away, and Bilal, so like this R&B singer. So he is a very versatile musician. And Gerald Cannon, the double bass player, and Willie Jones III, they used to be in the rhythm section of Roy Hargrove. And that's also how we met. So James I met when he was playing with Abraham, and Willie and Gerald I met throughout their great performances in all around the world when they played with Roy. And so Corona hit, and then I just thought I asked them, and they were available. And it was at the end of COVID, and I think they were really looking forward to a nice studio project, and that's how we recorded. And of course, I would love to tour with the New York band, and I'm not. Maybe we will, at some point when some great festivals are interested, but maybe not. And I'm really fine with that because the recording is already giving me so much joy. And I have some really good musicians from the Netherlands I play with. So I'm going to play with them. And I see what's happening. And I don't have to prove anything to anyone. I'm
Yeah.
really playing more for my own joy and fun. And yeah, I'm happy with it, and let's see what happens. I think I learned also that throughout the years that it's more important to do what you really feel, and then things will kind of happen naturally. And of course, I'm networking and I have promotion and but that's it, But I'm not like, oh, I have to do this and that. No, no, it will come to me or it will not, and if it doesn't, then something else will come to me.
That's a great way to end this because, as you said, playing for your own joy, and then things are going to open up from there. Because when you're not, when you're playing stuff you feel like you have to do, it will, it will feel forced, and you're not going to
Yeah.
be as into it. And I think that that's great. That's awesome advice. Susanne, thank you so much. You've given so much great advice to people and great stories and all that kind of thing. I can't thank you enough for your time.
Well, thank you so much for being so interested in asking me all these questions, and you want to know all this. So yes, very nice to talk to you.
Yeah, I think the listeners are going to absolutely love this. Thanks again.
Oh, you're welcome.